The Wisconsin Democracy Campaign is the nonpartisan group that tracks the money in Wisconsin politics. All right, so you want to see where it's coming from. And it was alluded to before, Mike is like a dog with a bone when it comes for advocating for campaign finance reform. Before joining the Wisconsin Democracy Campaign staff, Mike has had lots of other titles. He's an interesting fellow. He was a legislative liaison and communications director for the Madison Metropolitan School District. He's a former state assembly candidate, a legislative aide, and a newspaper reporter. And his drive for educating the public has also been found. He ran a statewide civic education program for the nonprofit Wisconsin Taxpayers Alliance. And this little tidbit I did not know. He also co-authored a textbook that's widely used in our state's secondary schools called The Framework of Your Wisconsin Government. Something I think Mr. Walker forgot to read when he was in school. Mike is a true Wisconsinite. He was born and raised on a family's dairy farm. He's a graduate of our great UW-Madison with degrees in journalism and political science. And he's also served in the Peace Corps in West Africa, where he's always returned several times, and his last visit, I believe, was this January with his wife and son, correct? Okay, all right. And as I said before, ever since I heard Mike speak for the first time, I was determined to get this man up to the Northwoods. So it is with my great pleasure that I bring to you Mike McCabe. I don't know what to do with that thing.
Thank you, Kay. What a wonderful sight to see coming out to the Northwoods, and you see hundreds of people gathered, standing room only, and let me tell you, I've been down at our office in Madison and have spent a lot of time at the Capitol over the last 3 weeks. Have seen as many as 100,000 people on the Capitol grounds and in the building. An amazing sight to behold, and I have never been more heartbroken for my state. But I have also never been more proud of our state's citizens than I have been over these last 3 weeks. I didn't come to talk about the Wisconsin Democracy Campaign. I know that Kay has supplied you with some information about us, and you can certainly check us out on our website. But I will tell you this. Over the course of the last 3 weeks, there have been spontaneous boycotts of businesses that have been springing up all across the state of Wisconsin. And these boycott efforts, they're on Facebook pages, and they've set up websites, and they're passing around literature, and they're directing people to our website to see lists of who gave money to Scott Walker and who gave money to his allies in the legislature. And our website has gone viral here in these last 3 weeks. We've had over 4.5 million hits to our website in 3 weeks. Now that is more than we have had in many entire years. So the response that has been provoked here in our state goes way beyond the Capitol grounds. And you know, the Koch brothers arranged a bus tour to go around the state and carry people around to rally in support of this plan, this union-busting legislation. And every place they went, you know, they were able to muster 100 or 200 people, but in Eau Claire they were encountered by 1,600 counter-protesters, and in La Crosse similar numbers. 1,000 people marched in Wapaka, for crying out loud. So I've watched this response at the state capitol every day. We are in uncharted territory, folks. We have never seen protests of this size and protests this sustained in the history of our state. We not only have never seen it in living memory, Wisconsin has never seen it, period. And so history is being made in just these last few weeks. And then you see the fact that for the first time, we're going to see multiple recall elections all across Wisconsin. And people are reacting viscerally to what is being done. And we're seeing these spontaneous boycotts. It reached a point, by the way, that M&I's main bank on the Capitol Square had to close its doors 2 or 3 hours early because they effectively were encountering a run on their bank. People were flocking in there to close their accounts and pull their money out because of M&I's campaign contributions. This is the kind of thing that we're seeing. So we're watching history being made, and we are in uncharted territory. I haven't a clue where all this is going to end because we've never seen anything like this. We have no history to help us judge what might happen. But we are seeing this reaction because of all the paths that could have been followed, all of the routes that could have been taken to deal with the very serious problems that Wisconsin faces. The path that was chosen was the most radical and the most extreme and the most divisive route possible. And what the passage of that bill will do is unleash forces that will result in labor unrest, and it will result in boycotts, and it will result in recall elections, unprecedented in their nature. It will result in unrest, and it will eventually come to a neighborhood near you. Because as this trickles down to the local level, what we will see are local officials, mayors, city council members, county executives, county board supervisors, town officials, school board members, and superintendents will be put in a position of effectively having to wear a Scott Walker mask. Because they're going to be put in a position of either having to take a butcher's axe to local services that their communities depend on, or they're going to have to decide to treat their employees like dirt. They're going to be put in this position, and they're going to become the face of all the ill will and all the resentment and all the discontent. It won't simply be at the state capitol. And today, there will be tens of thousands of people at the state capitol. And there are farmers who are going to bring their tractors and parade around the Capitol Square today. But that isn't going to stay at the state capitol. It's going to be in communities all across the state of Wisconsin. That's why people are rising up in the way that they are. Because of all the courses, of all the countless ways that the state could have proceeded, the most belligerent, the most radical, and the most divisive path was chosen, and that is a crying shame.
That's right.
Now I have to tell you that I am not a public worker. In fact, I have never been represented by a union in any job I've ever held. And, you know, my employer pays a third of the cost of the health insurance for my family, and pays a third of a small contribution to an IRA that passes for a retirement plan for our employees. So I would suppose that I'm probably one of those people who could feel resentment for the compensation of public employees. But I can't work myself up into a lather. I can't feel that resentment. And I've got a lot of reasons why I can't. First and foremost, look, I'm the product of public schools. I went to public elementary and secondary schools. I went to a public university. I'm standing on the shoulders of people, public workers, who have created opportunity for me in this society. I can't come to resent those people on whose shoulders I stand. And you know, I can't work myself up into seething resentment about our public workers, because look, they are doing work that is more important than mine. They have jobs that are more essential to our society than mine. They are contributing in countless ways, in ways that are more critical to our society's future than any contributions I can make. So I can't work myself up into seething resentment for teachers and for snowplow drivers and for garbage collectors and for 911 operators and for game wardens and park rangers and prison guards and police officers and firefighters. And so I stand with those public workers in this moment of crisis for our state because of the importance of the work that they do. And they do deserve to be well compensated for providing essential services that are a core part of the fabric of our society. I can't resent what they do and the fact that they're fairly compensated for that labor. I can't. But, you know, there are even more reasons why I can't work myself up into a lather about this. Because here's the bottom line for me. This is a bottom line for me. We have budget problems in Wisconsin. There ain't no doubt about it. We are not broke. No matter how often that gets said, it still isn't true. We are not on the verge of bankruptcy. No matter how often people try to make that claim, it's not true. But we do have serious budget problems. But budget problems should never, ever be solved by taking away people's rights. Ever. There are all kinds of ways that we could all be asked to sacrifice, but ain't never appropriate. It ain't never appropriate to ask people to sacrifice their rights. And that is what has been done here. And perhaps my biggest reason for standing with the public workers in this moment of crisis is that what we are dealing with here, and it has finally become apparent, and the reason why we owe a debt of gratitude to the 14 senators who fled our state. And to some they are heroes, and to some they are villains. To some editorial boards they've been a subject of ridicule, and they've been roundly condemned. But there is one very important reason why we do owe them a debt of gratitude. They permitted the state of Wisconsin and our people to take a step back and look at what is really underneath all of what's happening here. The plan was to introduce that bill on a Monday, hold a public hearing on a Tuesday, vote it out of committee on Wednesday, vote it out of both houses on Thursday, and have it signed by the governor on a Friday. That was the plan. And by leaving the state, that plan was torn apart. And it gave the people of Wisconsin an opportunity to see what was really in that bill and to see what was really underneath this bill, what was behind it. And that was an incredibly important thing, because in the early days of news coverage, it was all about pension benefits and health insurance and how does the public sector compare to the private sector, and that was the focus. And the media initially bought the idea that this was about the budget and this was about benefits. And what became perfectly obvious upon further examination was what this was really about was politics and power. And it was about rewarding campaign donors, and it was about kneecapping political opponents. And that eventually became clear. It became clear that it wasn't about the budget. It became clear eventually that the state wasn't even at the statutory trigger which would require a budget repair bill. Now, that's not to say anything about any of the actions the legislature had taken, and some have said that those actions were taken to create the appearance that a budget repair was needed. $140 million in corporate tax breaks and all the rest. Put that aside. Even with those decisions having been made, the budget didn't meet the threshold that would require a budget repair bill. But yet a budget repair bill was put forward. And it was put forward because it was a Trojan horse, which would allow this what they hoped would be a secret assault on people's rights. This legislation was union busting, yes. And that finally became clear with some days, and the media coverage began to turn and began to focus on the fact that, yeah, this is about is breaking unions. And it's actually designed to try to prevent those unions from existing in the future. Not only stripping workers of rights, but actually threatening the existence of the unions themselves. And that started to become clear. Well then, of course, the call happened. And Scott Walker talked to somebody he thought was David Koch. Now, I've been writing and speaking about David and Charles Koch for years now. And my wife, the other, it was about the first week of the whole uproar, and she said, now I know what you were talking about all these years. And I thought you were kind of just had lost, the hinge had become kind of loose or something. And all this Koch brother stuff. And now, there are all these signs around the Capitol. Scott Walker has a Koch habit. Scott Walker's a Koch addict. And people understand. And now they can actually pronounce their name. I used to have people come up to me and for the first time they would have heard about this mammoth industry, and they would say, "What about these Koch brothers? Tell me about the Koch brothers, or how about those Koch brothers?" And sometimes they actually had one other pronunciation. And I kept telling them, no, it's Coke. It's like Coca-Cola. And now everybody knows, and you can tell because of the signs. What these people are saying about Coke habits and Coke addictions and all of that. Well, yeah, this was very much about paying back the Koch brothers, and Wisconsin is very much the first domino in a whole series of dominoes that have been set up around the country. They hoped that when this one falls, it will create a chain reaction. And yes, the Koch brothers put $43,000 directly into Scott Walker's campaign, one of the biggest campaign supporters he has. And yes, they put $1 million into the Republican Governors Association, which turned around and spent $5 million helping to get him elected. And so yes, they are very heavy investors, and so is the Club for Growth, which is bankrolled significantly by Howie Rich, a wealthy New York real estate developer. Yeah, there are these outside forces that have come to Wisconsin to help drive a national agenda. And that started to become clear. And so that was an important blessing for our state, to be able to take a time out and look at what's underneath this. And that's really what I want to talk about, is what's underneath this. And before I really turn to the subject of campaign financing and the money that is underneath this and driving what we're all experiencing, I just have to say that that what was signed into law by the governor this week is the first shoe to drop. But it's just the first shoe to drop, because he's also made a 2-year budget proposal that contains a whole bunch of stuff that people need to become familiar with. What this budget proposal is Robin Hood in reverse.